Hashem, today's daf yomi is Menachos daf Samach Aleph, Menachos 61. Today's daf yomi, we'll start with the Mishnah on Samach Aleph, Amud Aleph 61a, around 12 lines on the top. The Mishnah says, Elu tu'unas tenufa, ve'in tu'unas hagasha. Yesterday we talked about the karbonos that require hagasha. Today we're talking about the karbonos that require waving. We'll see how the waving took place, that you're supposed to wave the carbon in different directions, but they do not require hagasha. What is the one that requires waving but not hagasha? The lug shemen shamatzora va'ashamo. You take a lug of oil and you wave it with the ashams that the mitzora would bring, with the carbon that mitzora would bring. Hold on one second. Okay, we continue. Va'bikurim, and also the first fruits that are brought to the base of Mikdash are waved. Kedivrei Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, as Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov taught. Ve'emurei shalmei yachid, the emurim of an individual. If an individual brings a carbon shlomim, then the fats, the fats of the carbon are brought as an offering on the altar. So those are waved first, alongside the chaza v'shok, showing alongside the breast and the thigh. Echad anashim ve'echad nashim b'Yisrael v'lo b'acherim. Both men and women amongst Israel, the Jewish men, v'lo b'acherim, and not others. But Gemara is going to explain what that means. The shtei lechem, the two loaves of bread, ushnei kivtzei atzeres, and the two sheep of the Shalmei Tzibor of Shavuos, the communal offerings of the sheep, are waved with the two loaves of bread. Keitzadu oseh, what does he do? Nosin shtei alechem al gabe shnei kevasim. He puts the two loaves of bread on top of two sheep. Umeniach shtei yadav lamata, and he puts his two hands underneath the sheep. Molech umevi, he brings it forward and backwards, malo morid, up and down. So he does it in 4 directions. Not like when we do the lulav and esrog, we do it in 6 directions. And how do we know this? Asher hunaf v'asher huram. It says that you wave and you lift up. Tenufa haisa b'mizrach. The waving happened on the eastern part of the courtyard. Hagasha b'mayrav. And the hagasha, when you take the carbon mincha and touch it to the alt mizbeach, that happened in the southwest corner. Tenufa called most agashos, and you do the waving before you do the agasha. Bring it to touch the altar. Minchas omer or minchas kenos, the mincha of the carbon omer, which is the barley offering on the second day of Pesach, and the mincha of the sota woman to unos hagasha utenufa. They both require the hagasha and the tenufa. Lechem apanim uminchas nesachim, and lechem apanim. This is the bread that goes on the shulchan. And the mincha of the nistachim, that's the carbon mincha that accompanies the animal offerings, ain't to unos lo agasha vo tenufa. They do not require the agasha or the tenufa. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon's not really coming to argue. He's just coming to clarify in a way that everybody can make it easier to understand. Rabbi Shimon says that there are gimel meaning. There are 3 types of karbanos. To unon gimel mitzvos, and altogether they require 3 mitzvos. Shtayim v'kol achas man. Each one of them has 2. Ushlishis iben. So all of these 3, each one of them has 2 out of the 3. Ve'elohein, these are the 3. The zivchei shalmei yachad, an individual carbon shalom. Zivchei shalmei tzibor, communal shalom that's brought on Shavuos. The asham mitzora, and the asham of the mitzora. The zivchei shalmei yachad, the shlomim of the individual, to unin smicha. It requires, before the carbon is brought, smicha, the laying hands on the animal and the recitation of a prayer. Utenufa, and it requires smicha, while it requires smicha, chayim, v'tenufa shchutin. It requires smicha while it's alive, and waving while it's dead. Ve'ein ben tenufa chayim, but it's not waved while it's alive. But the zivchei shalom tzibor, the communal shlomim, tu'unim tenufa chayim ushchutin. It requires waving while it's alive, and then another waving after it's shechted. Ve'ein b'hem smicha, but it doesn't have the smicha first. The Asher Mitzorah, the Karban Asher Mitzorah requires to own smicha, utenufa chai, requires the smicha and the waving while it's alive, ve'ein bo tenufa shechted, but it doesn't have the waving after it's slaughtered. So while it's dead. Tana Rabbanan says the Gemara cites a brayso, Vikriv oso la'asham, ve'etzlug hashemen. It says, talking about the asham of the Mitzorah, it says the Kohen should take one sheep and bring it for an asham, and also the lug hashemen, ve'nifosam tenufa ofnei Hashem. Ve'nifosam tenufa. Melamed she'ti'unin tenufa ka'echad. So that means they have to be held together when they're waved. Uminayin shem henif zeba atzmo v'zeba atzmo yad. So how do I know that if you wave each one on its own and you didn't wave them together, you fulfill your obligation? Tam Omer v'kriv oso la'asham ve'henif. So it says that individually, so therefore you can, if you did wave each one individually, but yeah, but it's okay. Yachol yanif v'yachser v'yanif. I might think you are required to wave them both as one, and then go back and wave each one individually. I might think that basically you're required to wave each one twice. You only do it once. When the pasuk says you have to wave them before God, that means b'mizrach, in the eastern part of the courtyard, which is the part not closest to the entrance to the sanctuary. But didn't we say? But doesn't it say Lifnei Hashem, Yachal b'Ma'arav? And you might think that that's in the west because that's closer to Hashem. That's closer to the entrance of Beit Hamikdash. Amri Hani Migili Mincha. That when we say that the Hagasha has to be in the southwest corner, that's only by Mincha. The Ikri Chatas, because the Mincha is also called a Chatas in the pasuk, because the pasuk says about the Karban Mincha, Zotra said Mincha. It says, Lo te'afecha me'etzcha kom natzati usa me'ishai kodesh kedashim hi kachatas u'ka'asham. So the Mincha is called the Chatas. The Chatas to una yisod, and the Chata requires the base. And the Karen Dromis Mizracha, so yisod, there's no base in the southwest corner. So it must be Avohacha. So therefore, you have to do in the south. There's no base in the southeast, so you have to do in the southwest. But here, by the Tenufa, Avohacha, Lifnei Hashem Karinaba. Even though it's in the east, we call it before Hashem. Bikurim, Kedivre Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. The Bikurim are brought according to the opinion of Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. My Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. Where does Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov say you have to wave the Bikurim? The Tanya V'lakach HaKohen says the Kohen should take the Bikurim. Limed al Bikurim shetu'unin tenufa. This teaches us about the Bikurim that require waving. That's the position of Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. We learned it from the pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'lakach HaKohen atenem yadecha v'inicho ifnei mizbach Hashem Elokecha." So the word V'lakach HaKohen teaches us about the Bikurim, that you have to wave them. My time at Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, where does he learn from V'lakach HaKohen that it means that the Bikurim require waving? Because it says you should take the basket miyadecha. The Kohen takes the basket from your hand. Gamar yaya mishlomim. So we derive this from the Karban Shlomim. And it says by the Shlomim, yadav to the ena. Ma'kan Kohen, we're on top of Samachal from base, just like over here, it refers to a Kohen. So this is the limud, just like Rabbi Kurim, it specifically has to be a Kohen, Afalon Kohen. Also by the Karban Shlomim, a Kohen is needed. Malalon Balav, just like by the Karban Shlomim, it has to be the owner has to be involved because it says Yadav to Vienna, and then it says Yivienu, and Yadav to Vienna, Sishay Hashem Esachir V'Achazeh Yivienu. So we know that it's also the Bailim. So just like over here, it's the Bailim because it says Yavias Karbanola Hashem, and then it says Yadav Tivienu. As Rashi says in Menachos. Also here by the Bikurim, it is required to have the owner. Haketzad. So Haketzad. So if you need the Kohen and the owner, how does it practically happen? The Kohen sticks his hands under the owner's hands, umenif, and he waves it. He waves the fruit. Gemara says, well, why do we have to assume that this is like Rabbi Elazar and Yaakov? Why don't we say it's like also like Rabbi Yehuda? Blema nami kedivrei Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer. V'anacha zu tenufa. V'hinachto. Excuse me. It says in the pasuk v'ata inei beitius rishis priyadama asher nasata li Hashem v'hinachto lefnei Hashem olkecha. So that's in pasuk Yud in Parashas Kitavo. So, and Rabbi Yehuda says about that, V'inachto zu tenufa. V'inachto means you have to wave it. Atomer zu tenufa doesn't mean waving it. Maybe just put it down. Kashomer v'nicho, when it says in the pasuk earlier, that you should put it down before the altar. More. That's already referring to putting it down. So when it says here v'inachto, Rabbi Yehuda says it means waving. So why are we saying that Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov requires the waving of the Bikurim when we also have Rabbi Yehuda requires it? So it says, Amar Rabba, Pasach Bo. Since basically Pasach Bo Kosev Chila, that Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov cited it from Pasach Dalad, whereas Rabbi Yehuda cited from Pasach Yud. So because Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov cited from an earlier verse, we cite him first. Whereas from Nahum Bar Yitzchak Amar Hov the Rav Gavrei, since Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov was smarter, or he had more wisdom, because we learn in Mesechas Eruvin Samach Beis Amach Beis that Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Kavinaki, he was a few amount, but whatever he did was refined and fine, and so therefore he had 102 teachings in the Talmud from Gematria of Kav. That's the Vilna Gaon says, and so therefore he was considered to be superior. So therefore they cited him more. Nahum Bar Yitzchak says, how do they waive the Shalma Yachad? They take the emurim of the carbon shlamim, the fats, the chaz of the shok shalom, and the breast of their thigh, echad anashim, v'Yisrael of a. So my kamar, what is this Mishnah telling us? Amar Rav Yehuda achad kamar. This is what the Mishnah is saying. Echad anashim ve'echad nashim karbanon talon tenufa. Whether men or women, their carbon requires waving. Utenufa atzma b'Yisrael, but the waving itself has to take place by a Jewish man, avolo b'dei nashim, but not by women. Women can't do the waving in the Beis Hamikdash. Shtar Rabbana b'nei Yisrael manifin. We have a brayso that says b'nei Yisrael wave, v'inov dikchav manifin. Not the idolaters. B'nei Yisrael manifin, v'ina nashim manifin. B'nei Yisrael waves, but not the women. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Matzinu, Shechilot HaKosav. So, says Rabbi Yossi, we know that the pasuk Shechilot HaKosav, the Torah draws a distinction between Karban Yisrael and Karban of the Kochavim, Karban Nashim B'smicha. We know that the Bnei Yisrael, that the Torah draws a distinction between the carbon of the Bnei Yisrael to the carbon of the idolaters, and the carbon of the women with respect to smicha, the confessional prayer that you say on the animal before it's sacrificed. Smicha b'ba'alim, smicha has to take place by the owner, and so therefore, hold on. I think I skipped on. So we see as follows. Matzinu says Rabbi Yossi, Matzinu shachal kasav ben carbon Yisrael carbon of the carbon nashim, v'carbon nashim. I really should say v'carbon nashim bismicha yachal nachok b'tinuf. I might think they should also draw a distinction between waving. We say no. We don't say that. We don't say that. Mali chalak b'smicha. Why did they shasmicha b'balam nachok b'tenufa shatenufa b'kohanim? The reason why there's a distinction by the smicha is because the smicha is done by the owner, and so therefore it doesn't apply to the adulterers and the women. But the tenufa is done by the kohanim. Nachok the tenufa shetu tenufa by kohanim. So if that's the case, the rabbis say back to Rabbi Yosim came ma'atam alomar b'nei Israel. So if that's the case, that we say that there is a distinction. What it says, B'nai Yisrael manifim, not the idolaters. B'nai Yisrael manifim, ve'ein nashim manifim. Men wave, but not the women. Tanya Yidach, another brayso states, B'nai Yisrael, ainli ella B'nai Yisrael. I only know that B'nai Yisrael are required to do the waving. I know that the converts and the freed slaves also have to do the waving. Tamal Omer, he kriv. It says in the pasuk, "Amakrives zevach shamav Hashem yavias karbano Hashem mizevach shalamav." So it says in the pasuk "Kamakriv," which means that also the gerim and the freed slaves have to do the waving. Oh, eno ella zek kohen makriv. Maybe when it says makriv, it doesn't refer to gerim and the avad mishachram, but maybe it refers to the kohen is the one who does the waving. Kishuomer yadav to Vienna, when it says in the pasuk by the carbon shalom, his hands will bring it. All right, balam amor. So that refers to the owner. So the first makriv refers to the kohen and the owner. Haketzad. What do you do? Kohen maniach yadav tachas yedei bailam. If the kohen sticks his hands underneath the hands of the owners and they wave it, ketzad osa. How does he do it? Meniach imurim al fisa sayad. He puts the imurim on the fats on the palm of the hand. And then he puts the breast and the thigh upon them. And wherever there is bread, the bread goes on top of it. Where do we see it? Where do we see this case that the bread goes above? By the miluim ceremony, because it says in the pasuk. It says in the pasuk by the miluim, "Mitzal matzos from the basket of matzos asher fnei Hashem." That was before God. Lakach chalas matzachas. He took one chala, the chalas lechem shemen, and one chala of oil. Achas v'rakik the other chala chavim. We put the bread on the fats. Val shoka yamin. So it says explicitly by the inauguration ceremony that that's what he did. Parashas Tzav. So the Gemara says, what's the reasoning? My time. What's the reason we say that he puts the breast and the thigh on the imurim? What's the reasoning? Based upon the fact, says the Gemara, if you want to say it's because shok ha-truma v'chazat tinufa ali sheach halavim, says the shok of truma and the breast of waving goes on the sheach halavim, on the fire on the fats. Yaviu la'niv tinufa. But doesn't it say so that implies that the fats are on top. That refers to the Kohen Mibeis HaMitpachayim. That refers to when the Kohen is bringing it from the slaughter place. In the temple, there was a Mitpachayim, and the Kohen would bring it. The Ramiway. And basically, the Kohen would bring it from the Beit HaMitpachayim. And when he would do that, when he would bring them, he would put the chaylev on top of the chazeh, so that when he gives it to the Kohen who's going to wave them, the chaylev is going to be taken off of the top and it'll be down first. So when the Kohen slaughters it, he has the one who brings it to the Kohen who's going to wave it as the chazeh down and the fats on top of that. But then he gives it to the Kohen who's going to wave it and he puts the fats down first. Gemara says, but doesn't it say that afterwards it says that they placed the fats on the breast. So it seems even after the Kohen waves it, the fats are on the breast. The Gemara says, no, that's because after the waving, he gave it to another person. And so therefore he took what was on top, which was the breast, and then he put the fats. And so why is the Pasuk telling us this? To tell us, why does he need to give it to another Kohen to burn it? To tell us, the Ba'ina Shlosha Kohanim, we need 3 Kohanim. One to bring it from the Beit Mitbachaya, one to wave it, and one to burn it. And why do we need so many Kohanim? Because it says, in the multitude of the people is the glory of the king. And so therefore, since it's a big inyan to have as many Kohanim as possible participating in the holiness. Okay, we can